This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Granger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
With your host, Andrew Donaldson. This is Heard Tell.
Welcome back to Heard Tell. Okay, we get to talk about something kind of sad, but a little bit of fun, and something that's actual cultural impact, not that political cultural impact we're talking about how you actually live your everyday life. Our good buddy, he's a documentarian. He's a longtime journalist. He's been on the show before. Great to have him back. John W. Miller, how are you, sir?
I'm great this morning. Great to be back. Always like talking to you.
Yeah, we love having you. We talked about Moundsville last time, your great documentary. Here's something else that's kind of synonymous with small town American life, but also used to be in the cities, which you're going to talk about because it's kind of disappearing in the cities. Little League Baseball. What got you writing about this? You got a great piece in American Magazine. What got you on Little League Baseball?
Well, I am a baseball player and coach kind of by trade. It's been a kind of side career. When I was growing up in Brussels in the 1980s, in Belgium, it had a really big community of Americans, probably 20,000 Americans, and a very, very good little league with 1,000 kids, and the ambassador to Belgium from the US would throw out the first pitch. And we would send teams to Williamsport in the Little League World Series. It was a very good league. And I played in it, and I just loved it. And I got to be pretty good at baseball. And I played in college a little bit at Mount St. Mary's in Maryland. Then in my 20s, played club baseball in Europe. And I moved to Pittsburgh in 2011 for the Wall Street Journal. And after I decided to leave the Wall Street Journal, I decided to get back into baseball coaching. And so I Googled Pittsburgh baseball coaching job, and I found a job about half an hour north of the city with a private club. Because I was there as a coach, not a journalist, I'm not naming the club or any of the players or families. But it's the reason I wrote about it was pretty typical of what youth baseball has become now in America. And so I thought it was worth taking a dive into this transition we've done from all volunteer based sort of participatory leagues to the more private, more expensive, often higher quality of play. It's often called travel sports or travel baseball. I prefer to call it private or privatized sports because I think that more accurately describes what it is, because it's often people trying to make a profit who own the club and who are using it to pay for their own salary and pay for their 401k and pay for their kids' education. So it's becoming like little businesses, which obviously, this is America. There's nothing wrong with starting a business. I just thought it should be talked about a bit more.
Now, we're much of an age. It wasn't that long ago when I was a kid. You played t-ball, and then you played Little League, and then you might play, what they call Pony League or American Legion ball, and then other than that, you go play, high school, middle school, and then college. The travel teams, talk about the rise of how this started to change, because, and you went into some baseball history in your piece that some folks may not. Baseball really is America's organic sport. Like, this is something we came up with on our own. When did it start to change from, okay, you play t-ball, you played Little League, you play maybe, American Legion ball, something like that, to these travel teams, and what changed that?
So it was in the 90s and aughts. I am pretty sure that well, I know that what motivated people is having a higher quality of play, and it was kind of imitating the all-star teams that would be put together every year for Little League baseball. So Little League is an incredible organization. It spans the globe. When I was a kid in Brussels, we had Little League teams. And if you're charter Little League, you have access to this global tournament where the best players from your league get together and they can play. And if they keep winning, they go all the way to not just Williamsport, but other places for different age groups And I as a coach, twice I won European championships, and Little League paid for my little brother and his teammates and me to fly to Michigan, to fly to Maine to compete in global tournaments. And so you have this pyramid structure, but the problem is that if you lose your team of all-stars, they have to stop playing, and that can happen in June or July. And the tournament, the World Series, not till August. So what happened was parents of teams whose players had lost in these tournaments were like, well, we'd like these guys to keep playing. This is a great team. How can we do that? And so you had, in the 90s, you had started seeing development of private complexes, which would charge money to have teams come play in tournaments. And where I live in Pittsburgh, there's a bunch of them. There's a guy who's like a plumber who, with this land he owned, built 2 baseball complexes. And every weekend from April to October, he can get 20, 30 teams in there, each paying $1,000 to play in the tournament. And the tournaments are set up to be really exciting. So often you have 2 games on the Saturday that are round robin, and Sunday it's a knockout round. And it's thrilling to be a part of that. And so it's kind of taking that Little League World Series experience and commodifying it and making it into a product you can sell. And that can be for anybody who can pay, get a team together. And we lose in June in that big tournament, you're not out for the whole summer. So it's kind of turning that Little League World Series experience into a product is what I think happened.
Yeah, that's the business side of it. The cultural side of that is when you start doing all-star teams and you start doing these travel teams and tournaments, though, you've moved away from, well, this is our city team or our community team or our county team. And now it's a mismatch of people. And that's where you started delving into, okay, this isn't just a community team anymore. And that's a big change, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in the old days, it would be something that would really unite all the kids in a school or all the kids in a school district or town. You'd all play in this league, and you could all, different levels of skill, all be a part of it. Now it's like, yeah, the better players will be driven off to the next suburb to play in somebody else's travel team. So it's definitely not healthy on a basic human level. As a baseball coach, and I explore this contradiction in the story. As a baseball coach, I find that the higher level of play quite satisfying, and I like coaching good teams. And I don't see why people wouldn't like better baseball instead of crappy baseball. But yeah, it's destructive on a kind of societal level because it takes away this reminder that even if you're a better player than me, we can still be friends and we can still be on the same team. We can still get along, and it's kind of, to me, it's contributing to this division in America, which is often economic. I mean, it's a society that's increasingly unequal. And so here is a place that used to be united, but now there's one world for the sons and daughters of real estate developers and medical salesmen and bankers, and a different world for the sons and daughters of people who work at Walmart or McDonald's or Amazon.
Yeah, and John W. Miller joining us. Let's be honest, baseball is a bit of a complex sport. You got to have equipment. You got to have a lot of people involved. It's not like soccer where you can just roll a ball out there and go kick it. There's money involved. And when you start talking about things like dividing it into travel teams, what happens is when you start having an elite level, and you touch on this in your piece, a lot of the lower level stuff or the community stuff or the municipal stuff starts going by the wayside. You mentioned in Pittsburgh, when you went to Pittsburgh as a journalist back in the early part of 2011, there's all these great facilities, but nobody playing on them. And part of what happens is there's only so much money going somewhere. And when you're pipelining a certain group of kids, the other group of kids, there's not a lot left for them to play, is there?
And this is a particular problem in baseball. If you take away the best 5 players, say out of 30, say you have 3 little league teams, you take out the best 5 players, you lose the kids who are strike throwers, who are kind of generating the rhythms that baseball depends on. To have a good youth baseball game, you need strikes, you need balls put in play, you need a core group of kids who are good at catching and throwing and catching the ball. If you take them away, the game kind of falls apart, which is not a problem you have in soccer or basketball, where the game might slow down or you might have fewer goals, but essentially you still have kids running around and it's still fun. It's still this kind of joyful physical thing. But in baseball, people just stand there. And so you need those core group of kids to keep the pace of the game strong. And that's a problem that's particular to baseball. And I think it's why you've had this decline in recreational participation. So now it's like for baseball, it's either you're part of a travel team, you're paying a bunch of money, and you're pretty ambitious, or you're not playing baseball at all. You're playing something else.
Yeah. What does it do? Because you talk about this too. When you lose a sport like baseball, like Little League Baseball, where it's pretty much open to anybody can show up and play, you can find, bar gear or whatever. When those lower levels disappear, again, there's the business side of it and then the community side of it. What did it do to the community side for these, especially in the inner cities where baseball has almost disappeared in a lot of them? What does that do to the communities where they don't have that sport edge that you found when you started researching this?
I mean, they've lost baseball. I mean, I love baseball, but I'm not somebody who says that you have to play it, or that, you can have a happy life without playing it. So, I mean, people play other sports, and you've seen, I mean, not just in cities, but in suburbs and rural areas. I mean, lacrosse is now way more popular than it was when we were kids. Um, Kids playing golf, which I find kind of insane, but that does happen. Uh, so yeah, but you're right. In cities, baseball is less popular, and particularly in the African American community, it's less popular. And in my piece, I chronicle some efforts to change that, and it really depends on a lot of grassroots work. It's very hard to kind of manage from the top down, and despite MLB's efforts, you can't just throw a bunch of money at this and hope it'll just kind of turn into kids loving baseball. You need people doing the work. And so in my piece, I chronicle Nelson Cooper and Pittsburgh Hardball Academy in Pittsburgh. There's also a guy in Philly named Amos Uran who has Anderson Monarchs. And every city has one of these organizations. So if you care and want to help, I encourage you to figure out who in your city is doing this work and support them, because that is what it takes. It takes people actually coaching, on the field 3-4 times a week, doing the work, which is not easy. And it's pretty skilled coaching task to try to get kids excited about a sport.
Yeah, and to be fair here, this isn't just a baseball problem. Basketball, the same thing's happening in basketball with AAU, which about. Football, it's becoming a very clinic-driven, specialty-driven sport where you go to clinics for whatever your position is, especially for quarterbacks and wide receivers and things like this. This really is a change in how we view youth sports in America at large. It's not just baseball, is it?
It is, and the stereotype is kind of like that these are the children of people who think their kid's going to play in college or play in the pros. I think it's more that this is just a better experience just in the moment, that like you pay the $3,000 for your 12-year-old to play little league or this new kind of baseball, because that's what's the most fun. And if you're a good parent, in America, you're supposed to spend the money to ensure your child's being fulfilled. And so it's like, this is what the good baseball is now. It's like the premium product, if you will, to use the advertising language. And so, yeah, there are obviously some kids who are good enough to dream of playing at higher levels, but for the most part, I think you're just paying this because this is what the form of baseball or basketball or football looks like now.
Yeah, John W. Miller joined us to take a quick break. He didn't just write about the problem, though, as a good journalist. He turned around and wrote some solutions, too. We'll talk about that. Also going to ask him about a few of the people he met researching this. The great John W. Miller. We love having him. More with him on Heard Tell right after this.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Grainger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
We're back with our buddy John Miller talking a little baseball. Okay, so we know what the problem is. We know that the money's an issue. What's some of the things we can do about it? My first question about this, though, is if it's a cultural problem, like you said, MLB's thrown plenty of money at Little League Baseball. That's not the issue. How do you change a cultural problem? You have to have a cultural solution, don't you?
Yeah, and that means the people at the grassroots having ideas. So as a follow-up to my first piece, I wrote about some of those ideas. And basically, if you think about uh, youth baseball as its own sport, what you need is for there to be balls in play. You cannot have youth baseball become a contest of whether the pitcher can throw a strike or not. So you need to change the rules so that you have that ball in play at least every 30 seconds. So one thing I like to do is play one strike and you're out, or two strikes and you're out, where I'm pitching or a machine is pitching and you're getting a strike and the ball's in play. So that's one way. Coaches catching to kind of make the pitchers more comfortable and have them get rid of pass balls and sort of accelerate the tempo. Playing there's a guy in California named David Klein who has a game called Speedball, which is 3 teams show up every game. One team hits, one team plays the infield, one team plays the outfield, and you rotate. So you get more at bats with only 5 players, and you have different rules to accelerate the game. Smaller balls to make it easier to throw strikes. 5-on-5 with 3 bases. People think that baseball is kind of etched in stone and handed down in the Constitution, but it's actually a very malleable game, and there were lots of rule changes in the 19th century. And I think you just have to change the rules until it is exciting again. And if it's not, then why would a kid want to play if it's just standing there? I don't know if you know the Peter Paul and Mary song "Right Field." They sing, "Playing right field can be lonely and dull. Little leagues never have lefties who pull." And so it's a song about a kid just standing there, and all of a sudden the ball comes out to him, and he's just shocked. So yeah, baseball should not be that picnic. It should be fun and rhythmic and have good pace to it. And so you need to, again, change the rules so you get that pace.
Now that's something that football has done in America, especially now. We talked about how that's become a clinic kind of sport. They play 7-on-7, you do clinics, you go to things like that. It seems to me like something like that, because it sounds like, well, that's not the real game of baseball. No, but what it does do is the one thing that's really hard to get Little League to do is it builds a skill set, but it still does it in a fun way that doesn't drag like a full-blown game does.
Yeah, that's really smart. I should look into that. I don't know that much about football, but yeah, that seems like they're kind of forced to, I guess, because the grown-up game is so insane. So you need to modify it. But yeah, I'm all for just making up stuff that works in the moment, and not trying to be too traditionalist, because eventually if they're good, they'll be able to play at the higher level in the real game too.
Yeah, John W. Miller joining us. Now, you have one suggestion that I think is a great suggestion, but let's be honest, baseball can be a little stodgy. They can be a little traditionalist. They can be a little slow to change. But I think you have a good suggestion here. You talk about the coaches at the Little League level. It's set in stone that they're not to be paid, but this is something that should probably be changed because, and you had a great line in there, is like, well, you don't expect free violin lessons. Why would you expect free baseball lessons? Should they have some kind of a standardization of coaching?
Well, yes, it seems like it's going to be hard to fix this problem if you don't admit that your average parent, with all due respect, is probably not a qualified baseball or softball coach. And by the way, when I say baseball, I include softball and I include girls sports. So there should be a middle ground between a private club or somebody's making, and there are club owners, by the way, who make hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so there should be a middle ground between the volunteer parent who knows nothing about the sport and then the private club where it's $3,000 or $4,000 to play. And so I think it would be reasonable to have a fee that would be say $300, which is manageable for almost all families if in the per year in broad sense, and then paying coaches something. And so then you can get some qualified people and you can demand a kind of performance and demand a kind of pace and demand a standard of fun and excitement that you don't get if it's a parent who does not know what they're doing and just standing there. And it drives me crazy when I see a dad standing at home plate hitting a ball to one kid at a time, and while 8 kids just stand there. So I bring up the European kind of club model where it's often a public field or kind of a public structure, but you're paying the the coaches, and the fee is somewhere between the little league, $50 or $100, and then the private club 3,000 or 4,000.
All right. One of the things we always appreciate about you is you find these great human interest stories. Give me a couple that you found writing about this, about baseball. Give me one or two of the great individual people that you met that really bring this to life.
So I mentioned Nelson Cooper, who's an African-American man in his 20s, who, when he moved to Pittsburgh, was disappointed not to find baseball. And so he started out with a group of kids and just running practices and games. And now he has 80 kids playing all kinds of levels, and is sending a kid there's a kid from that program going to play shortstop at a major college. There's just a sort of culture and community that he's built around it. And I really admire that. I interviewed former major league catcher Charlie Green for this story, and Charlie grew up in Miami. And he told me when he was playing Little League, he played one game a week, and that was the highlight of his week. And it wasn't more than that. And that guy made it to the major leagues. So you don't need all the bells and whistles sometimes. If you love it and you're talented, you'll get there eventually.
All right, you coach it yourself. Tell me one of yours though. Just put it on a human level for me. You're a great writer, which is why we always enjoy talking to you. But tell us what you get out of something like Little League and working with the kids. And I mean, it's a game, it's a sport. You're helping kids. What does it mean to you though?
Well, I love sort of leading players into a place where they can play really well without yelling and screaming. I feel like kids usually don't listen that much to what you're saying, especially in a group. So it's all about setting up a structure where they're figuring it out for themselves by playing, and then you have to make adjustments, but ultimately they have to learn by doing. I do try to get boys to talk about their feelings, essentially, in a way that maybe has not been presented to them before. One example, there was a game a few years ago where we had scored 4 runs in the top of the sixth in the 6th inning game to take like a 3-run lead, and then we gave up 4 to lose the game in the bottom of the 6th, and everybody was completely devastated, and everybody was just sitting there, just crying, and it was they were 10, and it was a really crushing loss. In the next practice, I sat everybody down and I said, well, let's talk about what you were feeling in that moment. And I imagine that the feelings you have could be shame, and I explained what that meant, or anger because you're mad, or pride because you came back, or sadness. And I explained what all those feelings meant, and they kind of took it all in. And then I went around and had them say which of those feelings they identified with. And one of the kids goes, "Coach, I felt all of those." And so, yeah, just I'm not there to lecture people about, big, heavy stuff. But when the moment comes up like that, then you have their attention, and you can kind of help them connect. Because I remember as a kid, just feeling very angry whenever I failed, and baseball is a lot of failure, and getting really angry and mad and not knowing what to do. And I, wishing I had, or in hindsight, wish I had a coach who had sort of explained how you cope with that, because baseball is a sport where it can just be excruciating. You're by yourself, you fail, everybody's looking at you. And so, yeah, it's a chance for a coach to kind of use that moment to help somebody, grow up a little bit.
Yeah, John W. Miller, love talking to you, my friend. He's got 2 great pieces on this topic out in America Magazine. How America sold out Little League baseball is one of them. 9 ways to get kids to fall in love with baseball again is the other one. We will be linking to both of them in the show notes. You, my friend, have a lot of irons in the fire, though. Let folks know what you have going on. We've had you on before about Moundsville. Folks can still go find that at pbs.org. Let folks know what you're doing in your social media so they can keep up with you.
So yeah, my Twitter handle is JWM Journalist. I write a column for America every couple of weeks. I'm working on a book project about baseball, which I can't detail yet, but it's about baseball. I'm looking at different coaching jobs in Pittsburgh, so keeping busy, and I'm enjoying the kind of the interest in this story, because I didn't expect it would have this much interest, but people really care about baseball, so it's fun to be a part of that. I was on the Effectively Wild podcast yesterday, the #1 baseball podcast, talking with Ben Lindbergh about all this. So it's really neat that everybody is so interested in this, and I'm grateful to be part of the conversation in a subject I love so much.
Yeah, well, you do very good work, sir, and we love having you, and we will definitely have you back soon. So, John W. Miller, appreciate the time, my friend.
All right, thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, sir.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Granger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgranger.com or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.